Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So the new term is upon us, and I know loads of you are starting university or perhaps starting a new postgraduate course. So I wanted to make this video now so it would be the most help to you. Today's video is about budgeting, how to budget at university, and then basically I'm going to take you through how I budgeted my own money at university, and I felt like it was just easier to just show you all the figures and say how I did what. So yeah, I'm just going to share my top budgeting tips and then how I divvied up all of my money from my student loan in my years at university, and hopefully this will give you some insight and help you to budget too. So essentially the main tips are that you need to establish what you're working with. So you need to figure out how much money you're getting in, how much money will be going out, and then see what the difference is, see whether you need to get a job, see whether you can afford to do it, and effectively you need to figure out how long the budget's going to be for. So for me, I did it over roughly about 48 weeks because obviously the year is 52, but there'll be times when I'm at home, so that pretty much worked out. But if you're in your first year, a lot of hall lets are only 44 weeks, so they're things you need to take into consideration to figure out how long this money needs to last for. You also need to be very thorough about what your outgoings are. It's very easy to establish what your incomings are, whether it's a job, whether it's a student loan, any bursaries or funds from the university. That's easy to figure out what that is, establish what that is. But outgoings are a little bit more difficult because you're basically planning what you might spend for that year. So you need to factor in things like rent, bills, food, going out with your mates, your Netflix subscriptions, Spotify or Apple Music, like if you're like me, Audible, or like any other subscriptions that you have, whether you want tickets for balls and things like that throughout the year, takeaways, any holidays, any clothes, getting your hair cut, all of those things need to be put into a budget if it's going to be successful. So you kind of need to do a bit of like mind reading, bit of seeing into the future of what you think you will use, and that's kind of the best way to do a budget. But the more you budget, the easier it becomes because you kind of see your own patterns for spending and it just becomes a little bit easier. So just try and write down basically all the things you think you're going to spend on, how much, how regularly, and then include that into your budget. So the way I would then set out my budget, I did mine on a spreadsheet because I could then dip in and out each month. If you put in formulas on a spreadsheet, it adds things up for you, so it makes life easier. And also I could flick between the tabs and see year 1, year 2, year 3 at university and kind of figure out how much I was spending when. So I personally like to use Excel spreadsheets, but you could also use apps. There's things like Monzo where you type in how much budget you want for an allotted time, and then it will like only transfer that or only allow you to have access to that. Or whether you just want to go old school, have a piece of paper, write it all in, go through your bank statements and figure out what you're spending when, and kind of figure it like that. Up to you fully. And I think also a bit of trial and error enables you to kind of figure out the best way for you and what you really like in order to budget. And I guess my final bit of advice on the budget front is to don't spend unnecessarily. I know that's like obvious, but there are a lot of things that I think people see as necessity that if you are going to be, a bit more frugal, and at university you kind of need to be, that you can kind of cut a lot of things out. Like when I was at university, I rarely spent anything on clothes because I just don't need to. I have loads of clothes, and it was very rare that I'd buy coffees out, very rare that I'd get a takeaway. I think I got 4 takeaways in my whole of my 3rd year. So it's quite rare that I would do that. And I wouldn't really eat out. I would mainly just get drinks out, and if we did, we'd go to like studenty pubs that were cheaper. I'd always know what deals were on when. Makes me sound like I'm really cheap. I'm not. I just like good value for money, and I don't see the point in spending £10 on something when I know you can get it for 2 around the corner. So that's kind of the message of this kind of bit of advice, is just ask yourself, would you rather bring coffee from home than get a coffee out every day? Because if you get 1 coffee out every day for the month, that's like £100. I would rather have £100 and then just bring coffee. Ask yourself that, you know what I mean? So I'm going to show you what my budget was and talk you through how I basically figured that all out, and also give you the insight to how much I spent as a student, how much I got from student loans, and how I basically made that stretch. So this is my final year at university. So I was lucky enough for student finance that I got the full whack, which is less in your final year than it is in second year, because normally the student finance stretches over the summer, but because you graduate you don't get it stretching over the summer, so you do get less. That's worth noting. So that's my student finance amount. I got a bit from the university as a bursary, so basically my total income was 9,150. Seems like a lot, but when you factor everything in, it's nothing, because that has to last me 52 weeks. So my rent on my student house was 5,880, which included bills, thankfully. So really, that's not bad at all, to be honest. and then I had to have a £200 deposit for that student house, which was returned obviously at the end of the year, but you need to factor the deposits in purely just because you won't be getting it back for a year. So then I factored in £1,400 for food, which roughly works out for £30 a week for food over like 45 weeks roughly, I think that was. And then I wanted to allocate £100 to go home. It would cost me £30 a return journey to get the train home, then plus bus fare on top, so really about 35. So that kind of worked out to like 3 trips home a year, which is kind of what I normally would spend, because sometimes my parents pick me up in the car and I don't actually have to spend that money. And I put £800 on going out, which works out about £20 a week. And luckily for me, Corona again, so I didn't end up really spending that. But even with my budget, I feel like £50 a week for food and going out, encompassing everything. And I mean, on that budget for food, I could eat for the week. I'd also get pods for my coffee machine. I could also get more luxury items like Ben & Jerry's and like shitloads of junk food. And I could still then have £20 a week to go out to the pub, and even on a night out, I can go on a night out on £10. So for me, having £50 budget each week is a very flexible amount. You might notice from this that I didn't factor in Netflix or, you know, Apple Music. I didn't factor in any clothes spending or getting my hair cut like I told you guys to factor in, and that's purely because this is my budget as a third year student, so this is only the money that I want to spend from student loan, but I also have savings, so all of those things, more like clothes and travel and getting my hair cut, things that I would just take out of my savings account rather than my like money for the year as a student account. So I just didn't include them in the budget, but as you can see on this budget, I still have like £770 left over, you know, and I'm lucky at York that I wouldn't have to buy books because we have them all online, but there are also things to factor in. And yeah, £700 odd left over for the year isn't bad. Like from the student loan, for me, that actually just went on my master's deposit. Whack that out. But you know, if you don't have that, then you could just put that on a holiday or towards the next academic year or just something nice for yourself. So for me, I feel like, yes, I got quite a good student loan, and obviously at York you get a bursary, so it makes life easier, which meant I didn't have to work, although I did work alongside my degree anyway. But I also could make that budget stretch pretty far, and I could spend a reasonable amount every week and go out, have takeaways if I wanted to. I mean, I never did, but if I wanted to, I could have afforded to do that. And I still had money left over from the student loan. So yeah, that was my budget for my final year at university, and I hope that kind of gave you an insight on how I divvied things up. The way I controlled my money each week is I didn't bother with only drawing out, say, that £50 or only putting £50 into my bank account. I mean, I'm very good with money. Like, that is just one of the things that have been ingrained into me since I was like really small. My parents have just raised me that way. So I know only to spend what I want to spend. So I don't really have to like put restrictions on that through apps or only drawing out certain amounts of money. But they're things you could do if you're like new to budgeting or new to handling your own money. So yeah, that's my budget. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully there's some tips in this video that you might want to use for the next academic year. And yeah, hope you liked this video. I will see you in the next one. I'll see you next week. Bye guys.